Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 22nd edition of the Shiv Nadar Foundation Conversations. We are delighted to have you here today, along with Sanjiv Mehta, my apologies, the chairman and the managing director of HUL, Hindustan Unilever. This is the 22nd such episode that we've been running in the Shiv Nadar Foundation Conversations. The intent of the conversation is to, have you engage with some of the leading, personalities of our times, people who've been shaping India and the world in their own way. It's also a time that I think we need positive, uplifting messages. So the whole thing about the conversation is how do we make this fun, interesting, and we'll have audience questions. We have at any point in time, something between 50 to 70,000 live audience, and as many as 500,000 and more viewers by the time the recordings are put on to Facebook, right? So a quick introduction. Sanjiv needs very little introduction. He's known as the face of HUL, the most successful Indian FMCG company. And he's been a very articulate spokesperson for where not just the FMCG industry is going, but where corporate India and India itself, how it should be shaping itself and preparing for the future. So welcome, Sanjiv, and welcome to the show today.
Saurav, thank you for inviting me, and always a pleasure to meet ex-Hindustan Unilever person.
Well, thank you. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Saurav Adhikari, and I'm the senior advisor of the foundation, and I have also had the pleasure of being an HUL alum. So in many ways, I wear it very proudly on my heart and sleeve. So, Sanjiv, just to get things rolling, we know lots about what you say on the business side and on the professional side, and HUL speaks for itself in terms of its achievements and what it's done over the years, and the leadership pipeline that it has created, and it's populated, not just in India but across the globe. But lots of our viewers come from across the world, from the US, Europe, and of course an Indian footprint. And I'm sure there are people listening in Singapore and the Far East as well. We want to know a little bit about Sanjiv Mehta, the person. Right? We want to know what happened, where you grew up, what shaped you, what made you make those choices to become a chartered accountant as well.
Yeah, thank you, Saurav. I'll first go back to my parents because they were immigrants from the erstwhile West Punjab, and they came to India after the partition of the country. So you can imagine that immigrant goes through a very tough life.
Right.
And my mother's side, my maternal side, they were very well off. They established the same business which they had back in what is now Pakistan. They came from Gujranwala. My father's family came from Lahore, but they had lost everything in Lahore. So they had to rebuild their life. And they had a tough time. My dad used to study and work. He was a career central banker working for Reserve Bank of India. And then he moved, after the marriage, they moved to Mumbai. And I was born in Kanpur because my maternal grandparents were there and my mom had gone there for delivery. But I grew up in Mumbai. So I am a quintessential Indian middle class person, and I'm a very proud Mumbaiker. Grew up in this fabulous city, and having traveled to different parts of the world, I still believe this is one of the best cities. I know you're from Delhi, you're sitting in Delhi, but I'm a great fan of Mumbai.
Well, by early grounding.
Sorry?
No, I said my early grounding was in Levers.
I know, absolutely.
So I feel a bit of Mumbaiker in myself too.
So I, grew up in, like I said, a very quintessential middle class family.
Right.
Those were the days when we never had, foreign holidays. Namini Sunatha. Holidays used to be going to Delhi and Kanpur, yeah,
Right.
where our grandparents were there. And life was all about cricket and school. So it was a simple childhood, but a very happy childhood. And, the mm, hard work, the values of integrity, hard work, love for the nation, all that came from our parents. And the best time of the day used to be the dinner time when my siblings and our parents, we would sit together. And our father used to regale us with stories about the Reserve Bank, the economy, the finance. And I think that somehow had an indelible impression on my mind. And I think that is what took me to becoming a chartered accountant. But somewhere in the way, like many of my age, I thought of becoming a cricketer. So I joined Bherda New High School, which was absolutely a great school for cricket.
Right.
And those were the days when the Harry Shield competition used to be between Anjuman Islam and Bherda.
Right.
Those were the two schools competing for it. But looking at the sheer talent in the school, I soon realized that I won't be making it big in cricket. So then I focused my attention on becoming a chartered accountant. I was very clear before I left school that I want to be a CA. Then after 12th, I did my entrance exam, and then I started my chartered accountancy much before I did my graduation. And I had an opportunity to do my articleship under NKP Salve, who incidentally was also the cricket board president.
Yes, I remember.
But he was Congress MP and a minister. And amongst the many other things that I remember of my articleship days, I also remember campaigning for him when he stood for the Lok Sabha election from Chhindwara.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was given...
Where you set up a factory later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that place pretty well.
Right.
And so that's how my education and the direction in which I went, highly influenced by my dad. And I look back with a lot of fondness to my youth, growing up, playing a lot, reading a lot, having fun, and holidays too, in Punjab Mail, going to Kanpur.
I remember the Punjab Mail. I remember that Punjab Mail too.
I know. So those were the nice days.
No, it's so wonderful. You rarely talk about yourself as a person, but you reinforced what I think in many ways Levers or HUL has meant, which is, you talked about the quintessential middle class values that you grew up with. I remember I spent the most of my time in Levers when Dr. Ashok Ganguly was the chairman, and he used to always say that this is a company of middle class people, and I believe this was echoed well before, right?
It's even so now.
It's not such a wonderful thing because it promotes meritocracy. It brings people up from the bottom of the pyramid as well, and helps them go through their lives and makes successful people like you as ambassadors of such a great culture. But I was taking a count today, Sanjiv, and I found that you are 10th in the line of Indian chairman, CEOs, managing directors, whatever you want to call them, heads of what used to be in those days HLL and became HUL now, and it started with the lineage with Prakash Tandon, and and went on to Rajadhyaksh and a whole lot of people till it's landed up with you. Now, I looked up a quote which I'm very fond of Isaac Newton, which says that I can see far because I stood on the shoulder of giants. Today, you have a legacy as well because people will say, hey, you know what? I worked with Sanjiv Mehta. Sanjiv Mehta did these wonderful, dramatic, transformational things when he was there. What did it feel like to inherit a legacy and to build one and move forward thereafter?
When I came into this business, which is about 7 years back, so the first thing I did was go and meet the former chairpersons. Yeah, so Dr. Ganguly, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Datta, and Keki. Windy was in London, but I've always remained in touch with Windy. He was my boss when I was chairman of Unilever in Bangladesh. And Harish, I worked closely with him for many years. Yeah. And Harish was my boss when I became the CEO of HUL. He was the chief operating officer. And you get amazing sense of responsibility. Yeah, because these are the guys, Doyens, they have built this great institution. And I had a fabulous experience when I went and spent some time with each one of them. But I'll just remind you with Dr. Ganguly. Dr. Ganguly was then still a Rajya Sabha member, and he was part of Mr. Manmohan Singh's 3-member advisory team.
Exactly. Yeah.
So after spending an hour with him over a cup of tea, I knew all of them. Of course, being part of Unilever, I'd met them in different parts of the world. And Dr. Ganguly, when I was leaving, said, Sanjiv, I can give you 2 things. One is access to me any time of the day or night. And second, my blessings. Now, these are the kind of people.
Yeah.
And in HUL, Saurav, you would recall, we have a great ritual. Every year, we have a retired directors meet.
Yes. I remember that.
And we have directors coming in from all parts of the country and also from outside the country. Right. Early in the year, they reach out to me asking me when is the date so that they could plan their program coinciding with this event. And this is a great ritual because for the young management committee members, this shows the connectivity to the past, yeah, of what a great institution and who are the people who have built this institution. So we have a ritual, lovely evening where the current CEO does a State of the Union address. Right. Then we have drinks and dinner. And then the most senior person gives an after dinner speech. Yeah, so it used to be Mr. T. Thomas till a couple of years back, till he passed away. And now we have Dr. Ganguly. And it is so much of passion still for the company. They are so much involved with the company. They're so keen to know what's happening to the company. They're very supportive. Whenever they hear anything good about the company, I'll get spate of emails from this group of people. And of course, from our perspective, is, you look up to them, you admire them, you share your thoughts with them. And whenever I sit in the boardroom and look to my right, there you have the photographs of all the former chairmen.
I remember they were on the wall, right?
Yeah, and you feel that they're looking at you and saying, "Hey, man, don't screw it up."
One day you'll be on that wall too.
You know what I've done? The way I have kept the photographs, there's no space for another person.
They'll find one. They'll build another wall. Or a virtual wall. But Sanjiv, there's a question I want to ask you which follows on from here, is that, you see, we talk about the chairman who all been legendary, whether it's been, T. Thomas, Ashok Ganguly, Prakash Tandon, including Vindy, and some of them may very well be listening into this or will be listening into it later. I had the privilege of having Vindy as my first boss and Harish as my last before I left HUL. I also attended just before the lockdown, Sudhir Sitapathi's launch of the book, The CEO Factory. And I was quite amazed. It's a lovely, lovely little book. And I recommend it to a lot of people, not just because of my HUL lineage, but because I think it tries to encapsulate the alchemy that makes HUL the CEO factory, and why its alum today are in such distinguished positions? And I don't necessarily mean in power or as CEOs, but they're impacting the world is
Everywhere.
changing. What is it
Yeah.
there? I mean, there's a bit of culture, there's a bit of performance thing, there's middle class roots. What are those 2 or 3 things that you want to share with our audience today that will
Yeah.
tell them what makes it such a great company?
Yeah. Certainly. One, of course, is the sheer raw talent that we attract. We possibly attract the best talent in the country. We're still the dream employer, the employer of choice. So that's one bit. So we believe that we get the talent and then we make them better. But then there are several aspects to how we groom talent. I think this is only company which in a very fluid manner moves people across different functions till they are able to understand where their passion lies. Yeah. So that's also very important. We help them discover their passion and purpose. The third important bit is this is a company which has a very unique culture where your background doesn't matter, who you know doesn't matter, but it's only the performance which really takes you up the ranks. And this is also a company which believes that even perfection can be improved. So there is always a quest to excel. Yeah.
It's a true meritocracy.
Absolutely. And then, very importantly, we take risk with people when they are very young. If you look at today, my CCBT heads who run large businesses and complete authority is devolved on them to run the business for a year with thousands of crores of budget. Many of them are in their early 30s, mid 30s. So we groom them, we take risk with them, and we never hang them for failures. Yeah, so we inculcate in them the risk-taking appetite. And the other important bit, which we don't often capture, that this is a company which reinvents itself regularly. It develops capabilities to make itself future fit. Yeah, so investment goes much ahead of time.
Right.
And this is a company where you're willing to disrupt your own business models to create the moat of the future. Yeah, so all these things put together is what makes HUL, and where you have a steady stream of great leaders coming out. And we feel so proud. I remember, Saurav, when Balaji, who was my CFO, he left and he joined Tata Motors. So in a month or two later, I was in an analyst conference, investor conference, and one of the investors asked me that, what do you think Balaji has left you? And I said, Balaji is a great friend of mine. He was a fabulous colleague, absolutely talented. But Tata Motors needs him more than Hindustan Unilever. And I believe Balaji moving to Tata Motors is service to the nation. Yeah, so we have a great bench strength of talent. And if Balaji moved on, there was Srinivas Phatak, who came in his place and for the last few years is doing absolutely a stunning job.
So it's the pipeline that is constantly replenished and trained. And I mean, I remember that, Gulita, which now no longer is with HCL, was the place with HUL.
Now it is 99 East.
Now it's 99 East. So sorry, I need to absorb that piece in my lexicon. But, it is constantly training. And I remember, even though I joined as a marketing trainee, I was trained in finance, I was trained in production. You've got an appreciation of business holistically. And I think, something that I remember Sudhir mentioning in the CEO Factory book is the ethical core. I mean, I remember in HUL, the biggest thing was how do you stay ethically on the right track
Yeah.
all the time?
Yeah. You know, nearly every company has got a code of business principles. And code of business principles is not about framing it and keeping it on, framing it and hanging it on your boardroom. It is about aligning what you think, what you do, what you feel, and what you walk. Yeah. When you align all this
Wonderful.
together, and for us, they are permission to play values.
Right,
It is not that a person has got an option whether he will follow the code of business principles or not. He has no options. So he has to do it.
right,
And for us, it is inculcated very early in the career that it is the harder right over the easier wrong.
right.
Yeah, so we are not worried about going on the right route and whatever may be the cost and consequences. Now, Saurabh, like I have been fortunate to lead Unilever companies for the last 18 years in different parts of the world. And there's not been one single day where I have gone to bed worried that I've been asked to do
Right,
anything
right.
which is illegal, unethical, immoral, or not in sync with my values. And I always believe that the softest pillow in the world is your conscience. I put
Wonderfully
my
put.
head, so I put my
Wonderfully
head
put.
on the pillow and I'm off to bed.
Right.
That's what Unilever does to you.
So here's a question, but before that, I want to share a nugget with the audience. Is that HUL is the fourth largest company in terms of market cap, and I checked it today as well. I think you're still above 500,000 crores. That is a staggering number for those who want to know that when we've got 20,000 crores being allocated for the so-called COVID response. But that's the market cap. I know there are two different numbers. One the valuation, and the other is an allocation. But it's an enormous endorsement of not just the way brands and the business have been built, but the culture of the organization and what analysts think the company should be worth. So congratulations on that. But I do want to ask you a follow-on question, Shreya, before we open it up to the audience. Is that there are two things you mentioned in the course of your interviews, which I was reading up. One is that, of course, you did, for a chartered accountant, spend some time in sales, right? But there are many such examples. Prakash Tandon was a chartered accountant from the UK, but he was in the advertising department. I remember Ashok Ganguly was a huge, he used to critique all the marketing plans. Keki Dadi said had an equal thing there, and it's not just, and Harish and Vindi always had the ability to look at the business right across. You spent some time in sales, and you also talked about something called brutal optimism in leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about how you did a
Yeah,
sales job and then brought
sure,
in brutal optimism as well?
sure. Yeah, you know, I still believe that the defining moment in my career was when I moved to sales. I used to work for Union Carbide before joining Unilever.
Right.
So I am classically what is called as the first bounce. I worked for a few years with Union Carbide and then I moved to Unilever. And I had an amazing experience working for Union Carbide. Just to give you, at a very young age, I was part of the Bhopal crisis team,
Okay.
which was the largest industrial
Yeah.
disaster. Then
Yeah.
I was given the responsibility to handle the divestiture of the chemicals and plastics division,
Right.
which I handled, and which was again at a very young age the largest M&A deal in corporate India then. And then I moved to sales, and we had a fabulous chairperson in Union Carbide called Mr. Vijay Gokhale. And after a stint in marketing and traveling around the country, I became in charge of the Bombay branch. And I still remember my first day in Bombay branch, because Mr. Vijay Gokhale accompanied me from the corporate office to the Bombay branch. Yeah, what a great gesture it was to tell the rest of the company that here
Right.
is a guy coming in with my blessings. Yeah, and I believe that my interest in becoming a general manager came in when I moved to sales. And today I recommend that every person who wants to aspire to be a CEO or a general manager should work in sales.
Right.
This is a place where you not only understand how the product gets converted into cash,
Right.
but you also realize that how if there is a 2 rupee difference on a petty, the
Right.
stock will move from a wholesale market in one part of the India to
One
the other.
part to the other. I
Yeah, so
have
the
faced
rubber
it as
hits
a
the road.
salesman.
So the rubber
I,
hits the road. Yeah.
yeah, I remember as a
And
salesman how quickly goods would move with these.
and I call myself a salesman all my life. मेरे से कोई पूछता है कि आप क्या करते हो, तो मैं
Right.
बोलता हूँ मैं साबुन बेचता हूँ. Yeah. So whether I was selling ever-ready batteries in my first job in Union Carbide, or selling soaps and shampoos in Unilever, and now I've been selling
Right.
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Exactly.
at the end of
Exactly.
the day, I am a salesman. Whether I sell
Right.
my company to investors or analysts or to people in Unilever London, my ideas, right? So you
Right.
remain a salesman all your life.
And that is true. And it is what drives the top line, and therefore drives the bottom line, and it what holds the whole organization together.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
power of sales.
And also, very importantly, because you lead big teams in sales,
Yeah.
it is one of the best places to hone your leadership skills.
Right.
So,
So
moving from there to brutal optimism. Yeah. Now, during my
there are
career,
lots of questions, by the way, which are leading into brutal optimism from viewers here right now.
yeah,
Okay, so shall I
yeah,
feed some of them to you right now so you can?
certainly, certainly, certainly.
So,
Yeah,
so someone of course has asked here in this VUCA world, what would be your advice to aspiring and future leaders? And I'm sure you can tailor your answer to that. There's also another, and that's come from anonymous. But there's also a question from Kumar Zilpilwar, which says, "Hi Sanjeev, in this difficult time and Unlock 1.0, what are the three challenges you see as the leader to sustain and grow the business?" So obviously these are linked into your brutal optimism, and I'd like you
sure,
to be as brutal, with your optimism as
sure.
possible.
Sure. Like I said, I've had a chance to navigate many crises. One was the Bhopal crisis.
Right,
Uh, then I remember when I was chairperson of Unilever in Bangladesh, that was the second Gulf War. And there was a huge tirade against the Western multinationals. And the biggest Western multinational was Unilever in Bangladesh. And there was a massive crisis, a huge agitation where the public was basically denouncing and telling the consumers to remain away. And I
right,
remember that it was a Friday when a massive crowd after a prayer was progressing towards a factory. But that's a
right,
story in itself.
right,
Then it was when I was running North Africa, Middle East. That was the thick of the Arab Spring.
right,
And if you remember how the story started from a fruit vendor in Tunis and spread and engulfed the entire region, and Hosni Mubarak was overthrown and it spread to the entire Middle East Arab world.
yeah,
So brutal optimism comes from that. This comes in when you have to, when you're talking to your people, you have to paint the reality. You can't tell them that everything is hunky dory. You have to paint the reality, but as a leader, you're also expected to show them the way out. Yeah, so the brutal is about the reality, and optimism comes from showing them the way out. So it really goes back to the Churchillian words that blood, sweat, toil, and tears,
Right.
but ultimately we shall prevail.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what a leader needs to do. Now, it's a very similar situation today.
Right.
Yeah, unprecedented crisis. And I
Right.
can't be telling my people, hey guys, everything is well, we'll be in office tomorrow, don't worry. No, you have to tell them that this is a serious crisis, it's a health crisis, it's an economic crisis, it's a societal crisis. Yeah,
And you need to
but this is
confront it.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
then we also have to tell them what are our plans to keep the people safe? What are our plans to ensure that the business keeps humming? What are our plans to help contribute to the community and the country so that
Right.
together we can navigate the crisis and come out stronger?
Absolutely. So there's a question also that people are coming to because of COVID and the general direction which has been set in motion last few years. And this is a question, once again, anonymous, so we don't have the name here, but it says, Sanjiv, do you see the retail experience moving away from brick and mortar models soon, irrespective of COVID or not? What will be the challenges to get the supply chain right and build the supply chain infrastructure for it? And I know that you've been very passionately involved in
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
discussion.
So let me give first a construct of the industry and then go to, if you look at the FMCG industry from a channel perspective today, that pre-COVID, yeah, and we're talking about e-commerce being about 3-4%. We had modern trade, which would be in the vicinity of about 12 to 15%. We had institutional sales, which would be about 4-5%. And that leaves close to about 75% with the general trade. Yeah, the mom and pop stores or Kirana stores, millions of them. We have about 10 million stores in the country. Now, if I were to do some crystal ball gazing, first, there are two things which stand out. Yeah, there are many things which have happened in the channel. Modern trade, if you look at it, because the big stores and the malls remain closed, they have pivoted towards the omni-channel.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thrust. But this entire e-commerce, whether it is the marketplace model or the grocery.com, they got a massive impetus. But the channel which really stood out is your neighborhood kirana. I call it the renaissance of the humble grocer. People have suddenly realized that the proximate store, proximity to you, what a big advantage it has been. You've not been able to travel, but you can just go across, collect your stuff. Yeah, the wonderful guy will also send a person to deliver it to your home. And there is a renewed thrust of looking at the humble grocer with very generous intent. Now, as a country, when you talk about 10 million stores, so 10 million stores means about 2% work on an average in a store, 20 million, 5% per family. So 100 million lives are dependent on the grocery channel. So even from a social perspective, India needs this channel to survive. But we don't want it to survive in the old fashion. We want it to survive in the new way. And that is where the digital connectivity of these stores becomes paramount.
Right.
There are two big constraints the stores face. One is the space, and the other is the capital.
Right.
Yeah, because they are unorganized. Even the banks don't lend them money.
Right.
And because the space is limited, they struggle with the right assortment. And because they don't have the science of retailing, they're not able to store the right assortment in the right sizes with the right depth. That's where technology comes in today.
Right.
We have been working on a connected store program, and we have, now more than 1 lakh stores connected, where even if a salesman doesn't go during COVID-19 crisis, on the Shikhar app, they've been able to place the orders.
Right.
Yeah. Now we have a backend which we have been working on, which are basically robotized and completely automated warehouses, which can ship directly for the customer and carry the stuff straight to them.
Right.
And I have a vision that a grocery store on Pedder Road and a grocery store in Dahisar, we will be able to customize the assortment for them based on the kind of shoppers and consumers who live in the vicinity. So technology allows us to bring in modern system of retailing to a humble grocer in a very cost-effective manner. And this, I believe, would be the renaissance of the grocer.
I picked up another comment that you had made earlier, and this is wonderfully explained. It's a very simple way to understand a complex supply chain issue, everything from space to working capital. And I remember a comment you made saying that if anything positive comes out of this COVID crisis, India can reinvent itself like we did in Y2K. Now, I moved from HCL at some point to HCL, which is a technology company, of course. And I know how the technology companies emerged out of the Y2K crisis and became as large as they are.
That's true.
And you came up with this comment saying this is the time to reinvent ourselves. Everything from supply chain, use of technology, and HUL is right at the forefront of doing this. So in fact, actually, there are questions here now, which just moving track a little bit on the ethical and the brand side. And I know that you don't like ducking questions. I mean, there's a question from an SNU, the Shiv Nadar University student, and I'll group these questions talking about consumer activism increasing. What impact do you expect on a brand's profitability? There's a Shomitra has asked a question about the recent controversy on what's happened on Fair and Lovely as a brand. And obviously, we are a very responsive, and I still say we, by the way, and that's not a slip of the tongue, Sanjiv. When I talk about HUL, it's still we. And so that's the second question, which I'm grouping there. And the third question is, how does a household name like HUL shape or mold public ethics in directions that break frontiers, particularly on sustainability, equity, and inclusion, not just part of CSR in the way you do business? So these are complex set of questions. They're more to do with the ethics and how you tie up into the business process. So sorry about throwing a complex bunch of questions.
Not at all. So let me feel them. Yeah. First, I'll come to the crisis and India and the opportunity that we have as a nation. The Chinese not very popular right now in India, but when you look at in the Chinese language, the crisis is broken up into two characters: danger and opportunity. So the first thing that the nation has to do is to keep the people safe, the lives, and then we have to ensure that the livelihoods continue. That's the economy. We're able to put back on the tracks pretty rapidly. But this crisis is of such a huge magnitude, and I believe it would result in a rebalancing of the new world order. Yeah, in many ways. The globalization, the multilateral institutions, all of them have got frayed. And this might be a way, because only collectively would we be able to solve this problem. This is not a problem which one nation can solve. Otherwise, it will keep spreading from one country to the other. Now, India as a nation, if we can, we have done a fabulous job of protecting our people in the first phase. The lockdown was hard, but it was very essential, because that gave time to the country to prepare the health infrastructure, which was otherwise very fragile. And just look at India and the US. You compare. In mid-February, we had the same number of cases. Now you look at the number of deaths in US, and relatively, we are much better off. Though even one death is one death too many, but relatively speaking, for a size of a population, our density and our fragile healthcare, I think nation has done a good job. Then when it comes to economics, the first job of the government is to protect the most marginal section of the people. And they have again done a fabulous job Whether you look at it from a perspective of increasing the Manrega outlay, having the money transferred directly to the bottom of pyramid, giving them free food, yeah, all this have been the steps which have been absolute, and increasing the MSP, absolutely the right steps. Yeah. Then the second thing which we did was providing lifeline to the MSMEs, having more liquidity in the system, because you don't want the wheels of the economy to stop. And MSMEs were the most vulnerable. So these were all absolutely the right steps. The debate remains whether should the government do more for stimulating demand. And here my point of view is that this crisis is not something which will get over in a quarter. This will take time. Yeah. Till the vaccine is developed, the world will be in a crisis mode. India doesn't have the fiscal headspace to go in for massive outlays, so they will have to be circumspect. And at the right time, I would believe the government would come and intervene if the demand needs to be stimulated. So I am still confident that because of the resilience in Indians per se, because our share of world trade is rather low, our debt to GDP is contained, and we have that space, I feel as a nation we will come out stronger. But if we have to convert this into an opportunity, then we have to take several steps. One is on the health infrastructure. What a massive opportunity there is to become the affordable healthcare capital. Second is technology. Just think of it. It is everything. I just spoke about FMCG. Look at education. Yeah, we could completely reinvent education. You could have quality education go down to the village students, which they could have never aspired or thought about getting.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah? Manufacturing. Everyone is looking for an alternative to China. India could be that alternative.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So this is a massive opportunity which India should convert, latch onto, so that we are able to come out stronger and move to the next growth horizon. Yeah, right. But this requires many things. We'll have to, just like we have done electrification of the country with huge amount of commitment and passion, we need to wire up the country in a similar way. Yeah, from a digital connectivity perspective.
Yeah, we come from a foundation which is obviously education foundation, which does a lot of work in online education and making sure it reaches everywhere. And we understand the challenges, but what this crisis has brought about, like you said, every crisis brings an opportunity, and you spotted those opportunities for HUL and on a macro level for India. We also spot the opportunity, and not necessarily in a business sense because we're not for profit, of being able to get digital literacy across the country. Someone like Ram Guha says that he's become digitally literate, has begun to understand a lot more of how to learn as a result of this crisis. Someone like, as distinguished as him.
The biggest challenge was, even when you have technology, adoption of technology. Right. The last 3 months, like we say in FMCG, market development of digital has been done. Right. People realize it today. Yeah. So that would be, again, a fabulous way for us to come out of the crisis much stronger. So coming to the other question is one I'll also talk about, Fair and Lovely. Yeah, I love the brand, and I'm going to talk about, because today we came out with a major announcement.
I was also Fair and Lovely, let me say, brand manager under someone for a while. And then I was the first export manager for Fair and Lovely, taking it to the Middle East and other parts of the market as well.
Sure. But before that, there was a question about how does HUL as an institution breed better values in the society? That was the kind of question that was posed. So let me take that question.
Sure.
In many ways, HUL is a national company. We are a microcosm of India. We operate in different parts of the country. We have presence in different parts of the country from manufacturing perspective. And our brands reach more than 9 out of 10 households.
Right.
Yeah. So the biggest impact that we can have is through our purpose-driven brands. That's the biggest impact we can have because of the
Right.
sheer reach. And here, let me give a few examples which will make it come alive. Say, take a brand, Brook Bond. 100 years back when this brand was created by Thomas Brooke, he talked about that you can bring the society together over a great cup of tea. And 100 years later, Brook
Mm.
Bond is living that purpose in India through Swad Apne Pan Ka. And if you see our communication, bringing Hindu Muslim together, bringing transgenders together, bringing them in the mainstream of the society. So, or in the current circumstances, yeah, people distance themselves from a COVID patient. Yeah. So this is not about you may keep physically away, but emotionally you should not. Brook Bond has been doing an amazing job and in a very bold manner, talking about bringing the country together. Yeah. Look at Surf Excel. What a fabulous under the dirt is good and its different manifestations. They live that. Last year, there was a fabulous communication about a little child who was a Muslim, and there was a Hindu girl during a holy day. How the
Right.
girl took that little child to the masjid. Yeah. And again, this is bringing the society together because we are a plural, multicultural, multi religious society. And it is so important for us to bring them together. Yeah.
Right.
So and look at a Dove brand, which is all about real beauty. It is all about inclusiveness. So the biggest force for good are our purpose-driven brands. So moving from here to Fair and Lovely. Yeah. Now, Fair and Lovely is a brand which is used by 7 out of 10 women in the country and across the spectrum of rural-urban divide. Yeah, it represents the population base. 70% of it is sold in rural, 30% in urban, just like a population is. It is the biggest brand in skincare and overwhelming biggest share in the face care market. But over the years, the brand has been evolving with the changing needs of the society. And the communication in the last several years has moved to women's empowerment. And last year, after a huge amount of research, we did a very big relaunch. And in this relaunch, if you look at the pack which is there in the market, leaving aside the brand name, there is nothing about fairness. It is about high definition glow. It is about a holistic definition of beauty. Yeah, it is about blemish free, it is about tone. That's where the brand has moved towards. And now, what we are talking about, moving to the next stage of evolution. Now, that relaunch proved to be very successful because the penetration went up, the shares went up, all the brand measures went up because the consumers loved that proposition. Now it's a logical progression that after having changed the proposition, we
Right.
now move to the new name. So I'm very pleased with how the brand is evolving and what it means to 300 million consumers in our country. They love the brand. Yeah. And that's the journey we are on. So the role that we can play is through different ways. Yeah. Now we have to remember that in HUL, we have what I call, Saurav, a multi-stakeholder model. And it is a model where we talk about the compounding model. Multi-stakeholder model comes from a premise that if we look after the consumers, our customers, and suppliers, our employees, our society, and the planet, in the process, shareholder value will get created. So that is the reason why we've been working in 5,000 villages on water conservation And today we create a water potential of 200 billion liters every year. Our cumulative water potential that we have created is 1.2 trillion liters.
Wow.
That is the reason why we have created 120,000 Shakti Ammas in the remotest villages of the country where they have no other source of livelihood, but we have made them micro entrepreneurs.
Oh, this
And
is wonderful
today,
news. It's not that well known, to be honest.
yeah, and just think of it, Saurabh, the business that we get out of Shakti Ammas is a few thousand crores. But that to me is not so important. What to me is important is
the
when you
empowerment.
empower a woman, you empower a family. 120,000, that's the kind of livelihood we have created. So, how we influence the society is in different ways. And the market rewards us because in the last 5 years, the delta market cap that we have created is more than the absolute market cap of any company in the country except 3 companies. Yeah. So that is the kind of value we have created, but it has been created through a multi stakeholder model and not looking at a short term, looking at the long term, investing for long term, aligning ourselves with the national agenda, and going with a very simple but profound philosophy. What is good for India is good for Hindustan Unilever.
Yeah, and you always said that a brand must have purpose and trust, and you've spoken a lot about it. In fact, I pulled out a Paul Polman quote, and he's been your boss before, and he says, "Trust comes on foot but leaves on horseback."
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely.
it, it's
Our biggest asset that we have, besides our brands and our people and our data, is reputation, right? Is the trust that people of India have on HUL.
It still remains the most trusted brand. And that's why the question is asked, and I know that you would answer it square on, and I appreciate that. Sanjeev, we've got a few minutes over time, and I hope that's okay with you. I would like to take a couple of quick audience questions, if you don't mind, and we'll wind up in a few minutes from now. So there are lots of questions about you as a person, and let me group them again. How do you handle stress? You're carrying this 500,000 crore market cap like, Hercules or Atlas or, any other, or Hanuman, if you like, the more Indian metaphor. So how do you handle a lot of that stress? Then the question is that, what do you really do with your spare time? What do you do to de-stress? Is it just Netflix, or do you go to sleep with a balance sheet of HUL, or or rather, you go to sleep with a document before you read? What do you do? So what's as we asked you when we started the session, we asked you about origin and what made Sanjeev. What is it that drives Sanjeev?
Sure. A person enjoys life when you're able to balance your intrinsic motivators with your extrinsic motivators. So extrinsic motivators are very simple. You want your company to do well, your company to grow, your company to prosper. Those are very clear extrinsic motivators. Yeah. Right. And you want a bigger job, a bigger responsibility, and so on. But then there are intrinsic motivators. Yeah. You want to invest in the development of people. You, in your own way, want to contribute to the development of the country. You want to see your family happy. You want to see your children become good citizens of the world. You want to look after your parents. Those are your intrinsic motivators. And each person has to find a balance between the two. Then you lead a fulfilling life. One person should not be unidimensional, because then neither the life would be enriching, nor would you be able to enjoy, and nor would you be able to de-stress. Yeah, you need anchors who would help you de-stress. For me, my family plays that very big part. Yeah, my wife Mona, our daughters Naina and Roshni, they keep me absolutely grounded. And very importantly, Naina and Roshni came to India just a few days before the lockdown, and I'm so glad that all of us are together. And intrinsic motivators are it's your also your own personal spiritual journey, right? And I love sports. आजकल खेलते कम है, देखते ज़्यादा हैं. I also love movies. I read a lot. And so you have to have a life beyond work, which will enable you to have a wider thinking, a thinking beyond work. And very importantly, that enables you to have a life beyond work and also enables you to absorb the stress, not pass it down to your people, and manage the stress.
Yeah. I also see a lot of books behind you, so I presume you're an
I love reading.
Yeah, I can see that.
I love reading. And but this was just to impress you, Saurav. I'm glad you know.
You impressed the audience all around. There's been a flood of questions, Sanjiv, and we've gone over time, but I think the audience loved it. I couldn't obviously filter all the questions and get them to you, otherwise you'd have been here all night, which I know that you have a reputation for being a hot taskmaster and for spending very, very long hours. But I'd like to end, with a note of optimism that you have covered ground on a bunch of issues. You've covered ground on how you are good middle class stock and how you have the quintessential middle class background, how you rose from there, drew inspiration from your grandparents and your family, your stories from your father at RBI, your journey through Unilever and what you've done, how you've tackled this COVID crisis, and you built a phenomenally successful company. And as I said, if the wall has run out of space for your photograph, you'll have to create another wall or perhaps something else, because you're 10th in a line. That's a lovely number, and there'll be many others, but you're creating a legacy for the future, Sanjiv. And I must say that you have been so candid and so articulate in your responses and not pulled any punches. You've answered them directly. So really appreciate this. At Shiv Nadar Foundation, conversations are about optimism and trust and engaging with people like you who can be candid, direct, and everything that you've been during the course of this almost an hour that we've been with you. So Sanjiv, thank you so very much. And I hope we can continue to be in touch and draw on your thoughts, your inspiration, and maybe come and speak to some of the students at the foundation someday, and they can learn a lot from you.
Oh, I would love to do that. I love engaging with the youth. It makes me feel young. But thank you, Saurav. It's been a real pleasure. And to you too, and all the viewers and your audience, I wish you well. Keep safe. Look after yourselves. Look after your elders. It's so important. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjiv. Thank you for being with us today. Bye-bye.
Take care.